Hello, everyone. It is David Ault, and I'm so happy to welcome you to another edition of The Gathering. Quick shout outs for this episode. I want to thank my dear friend Karen Drucker and my beloved partner Jay Lentini. We were in Northern California last week, and Karen and I did a virtual event together. And Karen had these amazing lights, and it was my birthday this week, and lo and behold, in the mail delivery comes the exact same lights that Karen had. And I'm experimenting with their placement and loving them, and it's never too late in this long history of doing videos to keep improving. So I'm very excited, and I wanted to give them a great shout out and a thanks for such a wonderful birthday gift. So I wanted to talk to you about something that I know that you've probably come across before, but you might not have known the name of it. And they are called autostereograms. Autostereograms. Those are those 3D pictures, and you're supposed to look into it, into a bunch of jumbled dots and shades of color, to see if the supposed hidden image comes to life. In other words, you're looking at it, you're supposed to stare, and then your vision adjusts to what it is that you see, and there is, quote, quote, the hidden object. And once your eyes adjust and you can see it, it's interesting that when you go back and you look at it, you almost always then see that particular image. And so those are called autostereograms. A stereogram is where you go to a movie and the movie is in 3D and you have to get those glasses. So you have to use something external to be able to see that particular effect. But autostereogram is where your eyes, your own personal vision, could automatically do that if you practice and if you remain focused on that. And so I love the idea that autostereogram, the ability to continue to look at something and then see the hidden image, is very relatable to our spiritual encouragement with recognition. So really, this is a talk about recognition. And I got to tell you that when we assess the history of our spiritual practices, the simple focus, and I'll even call it an allegiance to being able to practice recognition, is one of the fundamental, powerful tools that we can use to engage ourselves and be in alignment with the non-dual acceptance and the non-dual spiritual framework that everything is God, or that all is love, or that we live in a cosmology of infinite intelligence. It goes along with the alignment of a spiritual principle that tells us that everything is in a divine order. And yet, in human frame, in the world of form, which is what we call this human experience, it's everything but that. It's like we're walking around and we can't see the hidden image of that which is perfection. We can't see God in situations. We cannot see a divine order. In fact, everything else seems so polluted and even escalated in the barriers and the veils that prevent us from doing that, that we really have to have an allegiance to being willing to recognize that. So it's like the autostereogram. We have to be able to look at the world of form and allow our spiritual vision to adjust. We have to look at the world of form and be so dedicated in the spiritual practice that we willingly accept that which is God or that which is divine order is there, and I'm willing to see it, even in its apparent absence. And I thought the overlay of that was a beautiful example. We look at that image, that exercise and that image of audio stereograms, and we can't see it at first blush. But again, if we pause and we focus, we can. It comes forth, it's drawn out, but it's always been there. And I liken that to the very act of recognition, that all spiritual teachings fundamentally go back to that one thing, that it is up to us in the density of this illusional experience called being human, that we revert back to the ownership of the soul. And it is the soul's vision then which summons and beckons that reality of God, even in its apparent absence. And I want you to imagine what our experience as humans would be like if more of us did that. If more of us entered into the arena of this density of everyday life, the arena of the chaos, the arena of the disenfranchisement, the arena of the inequities of the world, the arena of poverty and war and illness and suffering, if we entered into those arenas, not by masking over it, but going into it and then creating a devotion to a spiritual practice that it's almost like a demandment. We are demanding the energies of the universe to allow us to implement within us a spiritual vision where we can see that divinity. And in seeing that divinity energetically, what happens? That which is the constant of solution, the solution that already exists, now comes forth, now is seen, now is available to implement. So recognition really is this spiritual exercise where we surrender our inability, we surrender the seeming human missteps, we surrender those things to a higher vision. It doesn't mean that we don't avoid them. It doesn't mean that we don't engage with them. It means that before we do it, as spiritual advocates, we make sure that we enter into those arenas as a person of vision, with spiritual vision. And I just the more that I think about recognition, the more that I think about my history of teaching that as a spiritual principle, the more I realize how potent and essential that is for beginning steps. Everything else sometimes feels decorative, but this devotion to being a person who is there to be a visionary. So auto stereograms and stereograms are all categorized under vision and eye health. And these spiritual recognition is like visionary, and spiritual health. And they work hand in hand. They work very similarly. Recognition. So there's two quotes that I wanted to talk to you about. One is from the amazing, beautiful Indian wise guru known as Ramana Maharshi, and he said, "Don't let appearances obscure the unity of being that we share. This recognition of the unity of being is the experience of love or beauty." Let me read that again. Don't let appearances obscure the unity of being that we share. This recognition of the unity of being is the experience of love or beauty. So he's saying, don't let the ills of the world obscure your understanding and your experience of unity, the unity of our beingness. Again, easier said than done. I understand that. But this is the aim. because the recognition of that unity of being is the experience of that unity exemplifying itself as love, as beauty, as joy, as power. And it doesn't matter how bad, how overwhelming the world of effect becomes. Recognition and its availability never takes a holiday. It doesn't have any kind of exemptions to its potency and power. It awaits. It awaits in its acceptance and its receivability from us to be the person who is willing to go out and to practice recognition. Ernest Holmes, the founder of Science of Mind, said, "The God within you is a unity. The God within you is a unity and not a duality. This unity is changeless, forever revealing itself to each." So recognition then is an invitation to see the changelessness of divine order without exception, without taking a holiday. And so you have to breathe for a moment, right? You have to notice the part that longs for that shakes its head affirmatively and goes yes. And yet the moment that we stop conversing, the moment that we put the book down, the moment that the podcast is over, the moment that the spiritual community gathering ends and we go back and we get into our car and we go back into the duality, those moments then that recognition in the soft acceptability of community or the engagement like this ends, and it's like we're sucked back into the cycle of the horrors, if you will, of duality. And so recognition is not, it's not a one and done thing. It's a partnership. It's a spiritual partnership where we wake up every day and we go, may I recognize the divinity in all. Let me tell you a little bit about those words. I watched a Matt Kahn session this week. Matt Kahn is one of my favorite spiritual teachers on the planet today. And he was offering an evening event, and I attended virtually. And he was talking about spiritual assistance, and that the way in which our brains, our consciousness, receives affirmation is more highly effective in this way. And it's not about affirming I am statements necessarily, but it's about saying may I. And when we add the may I see, may I recognize the divinity of all, as opposed to I recognize the divinity of all. Because when I'm in a space of not being able to see it, there's a disconnect that happens in that affirmation, and it's really more of a hindrance than it is something that's affirming. Believe it or not, there's an irony there that I'm doing affirmations, but I'm using it from a place of willpower to try to manage something. But when I say, may I recognize, may my heart be open, may I readily receive the gifts that are abundantly around me. This may I then, and the permission of the energy of that, softens our receptivity and our communion with that which we are affirming. I loved that. I have to say that was spot on for me. And so, using Matt Kahn's beautiful contribution, may I recognize the divinity of all, the changelessness. He also shared something too, in that recognition is helpful when we also allow ourselves to be observers of behavior. So he told the story of his upbringing and his parents. And he said his parents were professionals. They both had their respective careers. They both had jobs that they seemingly hated because the routine was this: they got up, they went to do their jobs, they came home, and the evening was all about complaining about their respective jobs, complaining about the people that they were involved with, complaining about the inequities of the job, complaining about the stress and the all of the things that were hurdles. And so they would do this. They would create this sort of cloud, energetic cloud of complaining about their work, and then they would feel as though all of that deemed them a reward. And the reward was really just numbing out. And so the mother then would numb out with television, and the father would numb out with combination of beer and tequila. And this was the daily thing. They would go about, they were going to force themselves to be in this awful situation, but hey, what are you going to do? You have to work. They would come home and they would complain, and then the reward of their efforts for having endured all of that was to numb out. And this became the cycle. And he said somewhere young, perhaps around the age of 11 through his teenage years, he just observed this. And he realized that this was something that he was readily seeing not only within his parents, but all around him. We get up and we're doing life and we hate it, or it's overwhelming. And so we're going to complain about it, and we're going to find people in our tribe who are also going to complain about their situations. So we build up these complaint systems, and then for everything that we've had to endure, we then strategize and tailor our numbing out mechanisms. Well, I had to do all of this, so now I'm going to numb out so that I don't have to feel anymore. And that particular cycle was not only enlightening for him in recognizing that he didn't want to do that, to replicate that. And it wasn't like he was even studying anything. This was an intuitive beckoning that was coming to him through his observation. And that then was the development of a part of his path of strengthening his willingness. May I recognize that there's got to be more to life than this cycle. May I recognize that there is fulfillment that is all around us. And if I can recognize it, then I can accept it. If I recognize the divine order, then I experience the divine order. If I can, may I recognize the people and the opportunity and the synchronicities, my own creativity. May I recognize the gifts that are abundantly around me. And by my willingness to see them, to recognize them, I can then observe the way in which my old mechanisms of numbing out no longer are needed. I don't have to escape my life, whether that escape is through vacations, or I don't need a vacation to escape my life because I love my life. I don't need to numb out by mindless television because there isn't anything that I need to run away from. I don't need to numb out or medicate myself every single day just to endure preparing my whole psyche for going through the routine of that the following day, you see. And so this idea of observing my patterns, observing those that seem to be in this endless loop, and then being willing to recognize that that isn't the pattern that I have to imitate. That what I can do is I can take Ramana Maharshi's words, I can take Ernest Holmes' words, and if I recognize the unity of my being with all of that, which is the eternal championing, the eternal championing, the cosmic cheerleader that is saying everything that you seek is already within you. All of the seeds of creativity that are constantly planted are automatically planted to the ways and means to bring that creativity to life in your individual world, the reason for your soul for being here. And we don't need to sink down into the density of the human reactive world that has to endure life and then numb out. And so all of this can be brought back to this primordial stance of, may I recognize. So how do you want to fill in the blank? May I recognize my value. May I recognize the people around me who recognize my value. May I recognize the solutions that already exist. So, my catchword for decades now has been solution already exists. Now I get to, thanks for being open at the top and willing to continue to learn. I'm going to add, may I recognize that solution already exists. And I'm going to start to allow the shifts in that to make that solution not so arduous. May I allow that which is the most optimum path of wellness for me, not for somebody else, but for me, to be seen, to be readily obvious in front of me, so that I can continue to move along into greater degrees of wholeness. May I see the fears and the way in which those fears have shut down my creativity, my heart, my joy. May I see them so that I can now continue to let them go. May I feel, hear, and experience my own internal guidance system. And so when you're hearing this today, I want you to understand that recognition is free. The spiritual practice of recognition does not cost anything other than a turning to and a willingness to begin to implement it. It can be as simple as, today I recognize what is mine to do. So many people go, I don't know what my purpose is. I don't know what's next. May I be open to see what my soul's purpose is. And I don't need to know it right now in this moment. I don't need to have it like a manuscript right in front of me. May I, with every step that I take, may I, with every prayer that I affirm, may I, with every conversation that I have, see greater and greater, with more clarity, what is mine to do in this world. May I forgive myself. May I forgive myself for all of the seeming transgressions or the ill will that I harbor towards myself. May I soften and release those grievances. And may I begin to understand that I have never been banished or kicked out of the garden of that which is communion with God. May I. And it is with this and the culmination and the practice of recognition that I can get in my car if that's a daily thing. I can go to work if that's my daily routine. I can raise my kids. I can engage in wherever it is and in whatever situation that I am involved in, and say, today, may I recognize the unity of all life. May I As Ernest Holmes said, may I see the unity, the changeless forever revealing itself to me. May I see that. And I want to close with this. I wrote these words a long time ago, that then in this practice of may I, we begin to see that healing is where the sickness is, awaiting recognition. The solution is where the problem is, awaiting recognition. The abundance is where the lack is, awaiting recognition. So now I don't have to numb myself, and I don't have to drop into despair when sickness is in front of me or being experienced. I don't have to numb myself out when I am surrounded by problems and conflict. I don't have to numb out when I'm in the seeming appearance of lack. Because healing is where the sickness is. When I'm having the sickness, I can begin to say, may I recognize the healing that is before me. When I am in the problem, and we will be in problems, may I recognize the solution that is so eager to want to partner with me. And when there is seeming lack, and that will be a part of the human experience, may I recognize the infinite ways in which abundance wants to roll in and partner with me. I hope that something that was said today sparks a new willingness within you to incorporate this exercise, to think how easy recognition is, the practice of recognizing. And just like those autostereograms, if we focus on that, we will begin to see things that at once were hidden, but now are obvious. May you know how much you are loved. May you know how much I appreciate the fact that you've even watched this. And may you feel that love, and may you feel this message within you in a place that can receive it and champion it and nurture it. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, namaste.